if you don't mind, let's take some viewer questions. There's some good ones here. Let's see. First of all, Jeff Epstein, what's up, buddy? And it's the other Jeff Epstein, not that Jeff Epstein, the Jeff Epstein who sings the song on my podcast, Citizens Media TV. What's
I know
up, buddy?
Jeff Epstein well. I've met Jeff lots of times.
Yeah. So he says that Warren Mossler's free book, 7 Deadly Innocent Frauds of Economic Policy, search Mossler 7 DIF PDF. Thank you for that. Kate, here's a really good question from Kate. When the stimulus money is given to the banks, does that mean they never have to pay it back?
No. When the Federal Reserve lends to banks, banks repay those loans to the Federal Reserve. They are getting those funds very, very cheaply, though. They're not paying a very high interest rate on it, but yes, that is paid back.
Okay. And then Kate also wants to know, Biden's policy is to cut Medicare and Medicaid. Is that BS? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, but I'll let you weigh in too, Stephen.
I'm not in a position to comment on Biden's policies.
US specific.
He's not going for Medicare for all. So I'm very much not on Team Biden. Well, but the impression I have is that he would be less catastrophic than Donald Trump.
Well, let me frame it in a more international way then. Like, how insane is it for you and just for, I mean, almost anyone else in the industrialized world, where you see that we don't even have, and when I say we, I mean the United States government and the powerful, not the people, but like our government doesn't even have the consensus that healthcare is a human right.
If I was to say, I hope this isn't going to offend anybody, if I was to say, in one or two respects, I mean, Australia is a corrupt country in some ways, but the US is a corrupt and failed state. It is particularly in healthcare. I was born in England. The National Health Service has been in place in England since the 1940s. Basic healthcare has been a right in Britain for the best part of a century. It is a right in every developed economy in the world, except the USA, I think. And the US, you spend, I can't remember what, it's a huge multiple of everybody else per capita on health.
Yeah, we spend about twice as more than everyone else, and we get less. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the most, and these people, Republicans, but some Democrats as well, they like to talk about efficiency and productivity. You've got the most inefficient and wasteful healthcare system in the world. It gives you gold-plated treatment if you've got the money for it. But meantime, it is probably the most important reason why the US underperforms other rich countries in terms of life expectancy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so something like austerity, that is just complete political nonsense because of the way our currency actually works.
Austerity, when you don't have tight full employment and accelerating inflation, is yes, complete nonsense. And it means that there are, well, depending on what the funds would have been spent on, it means there are people who are unemployed or underemployed. Your federal minimum wage, by the way, is a crime. It's just every federal politician who hasn't campaigned to raise it beyond $15.
Most of them don't. Most of them don't, Stephen.
Well, that again, I'm going to get in trouble. Probably won't get a visa next time I try and come to America. But they're all criminals.
You're in a safe space here, buddy.
It is a disgrace. The number of intelligent people, taxi drivers and others that I've met on those few occasions when I've been to the US that I've had conversations with, and I have discovered that they have never earned what is the legal minimum wage in Australia. Never.
Or in England, or in Canada, or in Switzerland, or in Sweden, or in,
Absolutely. So these things have to change. And if you want to have a decent federal minimum wage and it actually to apply to everybody, then you need a federal job guarantee as well to go along with it.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Brent wants to know, the Fed will now buy state municipal bonds. Why don't states just get massive money from the Fed directly and do their own UBI and Medicare for all now? The Fed can just rip it up. The heck with Congress.
The Fed can't just rip it up. They can't just write off. The Federal Reserve, well, at least I don't think so. Again,
well, what about the part where could the state just get massive money from the Fed directly because they're buying the state municipal bonds, and then could they give it as a UBI to people? Is something like that possible?
I couldn't tell you whether it's possible legally. I suspect not.
Okay.
But a UBI, there are problems with a UBI. One of those problems is that in order to, a UBI would either be far too low to be useful, and that was the problem, a problem with the Yang UBI, I think. You couldn't live off it.
Mm-hmm.
A UBI, to be basic, it has to be high enough so that you could live off it. And the U part means it's universal. It has to go to everybody, including the guys on Wall Street. Now, it involves such an enormous federal outlay that without completely rewriting the tax system, it would be inflationary, in which case it wouldn't work anyway because you'd inflate away the adequacy of it. So sure, you could rewrite the tax system, but I don't honestly think there's any possibility of having such a radical rewrite of the tax system pass. People won't vote for it. So I think it doesn't work that way around. There are other issues too. A UBI could easily just turn into a subsidy for low wage employers and an alternative to raising the minimum wage. And we have, and when I say this in front of psychologists, I have to be careful because they correct me. I often say we have dozens, and people then say, no, there's been hundreds. We have at least dozens and dozens of studies by sociologists, psychologists, and economists, which look in detail at the many non-financial costs of involuntary unemployment. And it is within the power of the federal government in the US to ensure that everybody who wishes to work has the opportunity to contribute towards social provisioning, to be doing something useful, and be paid a non-poverty wage for doing so. So I am in favor of a federal job guarantee. Now, not everybody that's in favor of a federal job guarantee is also in favor of a guaranteed minimum income, but I'm in favor of that too. Mm. If you had a guaranteed minimum income, it would actually achieve the same things as a UBI, but you would not have to completely rewrite the tax code in order to deliver it. So
that's basically, in some ways, that's like a smaller form of UBI.
Well, I think if you've got a federal job guarantee in place, virtually nobody will choose to be on that basic income. I mean, if you can't take part in a federal job guarantee, then you should have generous income support. If you can take part in it and you choose not to, even though the job guarantee itself should be defined very broadly, so that a wide variety of things that we don't think of as paid employment as now should be included in a federal job guarantee, ideally. But if you choose not to participate, and you have to live on beans, then fine. You're not going to get as much as people who are working in the job guarantee, and you shouldn't do. And there is I don't want to come over all Protestant work ethic here, but if you are consuming things, somebody is producing them. And if society wants to ask you to contribute towards the provisioning of society, given that you're not self-sufficient yourself, you do consume things that other people produce, then I think that is fair enough. But it's also, even though people don't always realize this, it tends to be middle-class people. Working class people don't usually talk along these lines, but we know that it's good for your mental health, your physical health, social connections you make. It means if you want a job in the conventional public sector or private sector later on, you're more employable. There are a whole series and just from the point of view of your subjective well-being, if we ask people how happy or satisfied they are, it depends on the nature of the job you're doing. But we know that almost everyone is better off employed than involuntarily unemployed. So the job guarantee will deal with most of it. If you then have a guaranteed minimum income for people too, it is my view that virtually nobody will be on it, because if the job guarantee is attractive enough, everybody will choose to be on the job guarantee. But I'm not everybody that campaigns for a federal job guarantee also wants a guaranteed minimum income. I do, and as I said, that gets you to the end point of a UBI anyway, without having to persuade voters to completely rewrite the entire tax system.
And it would be a different, just to be clear, it would be a different scenario for somebody who could work and just chooses not to versus somebody who is not able to work. They would be taken care of differently. Okay.
Absolutely. And I'm afraid that basic income, if it was down to me, would be means tested too. If you've got millions of dollars in a bank account, you're not going to get it. But yes.
So I know we're out of time. I know you got to go, but I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for coming on here. And before you go, give people a place where you recommend they go to learn more. It can be maybe your website or books you recommend or whatever else. Where can people go to learn more?
Well, I have already recommended Stephanie Kelton's The Deficit Myth, and both I and Jeff have recommended Warren Mosler's book, 7 Deadly Innocent Frauds of Economic Policy. I also recommend the website of the Global Institute for Sustainable Prosperity, which is run by two brilliant ecological modern monetary theory economists, one of whom, Fadel Kaboub, has written a lot about issues like...
Oh, gee, should we losing you right now? Oh, there you go.
Reparations, including global reparations as well. And Matt Forstater, who's written a lot about climate change and a job guarantee. So the Global Institute for Sustainable Prosperity, look them up. And it'd be nice to interact with people on Twitter if they want to, when I make some ridiculous comment or other on Twitter, if they want to say hello and get involved in the conversation, that would be nice too. We do have our own website for the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group down here in Adelaide, but it's a little bit focused on Australia, but that would be interesting too. We did have that conference. The conference site is still up, the Sustainable Prosperity Conference in Adelaide. I think it's mmt.adelaide.2020.com, if I remember rightly.
Okay. All right.
There's lots of things to be looking at, but most of all, if I had to say follow one person particularly, I think that perhaps the most important economist in the world in the next 20 years, well, let me give three now. Stephanie Kelton from Modern Monetary Theory, an English economist called Kate Raworth, who wrote a brilliant book called Donor Economics, which it goes through everything important as far as ecological economics is concerned, and an Italian called Mariano Mazzucato, who has written a variety of books, one of which is called The Entrepreneurial State, which discusses the appropriate role for the government in encouraging and directing the kind of innovations we're going to need to have a sustainable, prosperous future.
All right, and I'm going to add a fourth, Stephen Hale. Stephen Hale out of Adelaide. I'm adding a fourth to that list.
Thank you very much. You're too kind. Lovely to speak to you anyway, Ron.
Good to catch up with you, Stephen. Thank you so much for doing this. Have a great lecture today, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. I hope you'll come back on the show.
I hope so. Stay safe, everybody. Whatever else you do, stay safe.
Cheers, man. Peace.
Okay. Bye.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make get your